And on behalf of UNICEF and the Spotlight Initiative, a warm welcome to this private screening of Vaillante, a fictional mini-series about child marriage in West and Central Africa. My name is Sherman Bryce-Bees. I'm a correspondent for the South African Broadcasting Corporation at UN headquarters just up the road. And I'm also your moderator / MC and whatever else you need me to be today. Child marriage is a practice that is anything, of course, but fictional. It refers to any formal marriage or informal union between a child under the age of 18 and an adult, or another child. And UNICEF tells us that while the prevalence of child marriage has decreased worldwide from about 1 in 4 girls a decade ago to around 1 in 5 today, the practice remains widespread and of course not limited to West and Central Africa. But it's in this region where about 2 in 5 girls are married before their 18th birthday. And 1 in 8 is married before her 15th birthday. Despite some progress, a girl from West and Central Africa still faces the highest risk in the world of child marriage. Vaillante reveals the scale of the issue and showcases how young people, especially girls, can be part of the solution if empowered to take action. So this evening we'll have some introductory welcome remarks from the newly appointed UNICEF Executive Director, Catherine Russell. Let's hear it for Catherine Russell, who is a former ambassador at large for global women issues in the US administration of former President Barack Obama. We then get to watch the screening of Vaillante, followed by what we hope will be an engaging panel discussion with various stakeholders, actors, UNICEF's newly appointed National Ambassador for the Democratic Republic of Congo. Yes, Didi Stone is with us this evening. Woo-hoo! And then we will open up to you, the audience, for questions. So with that in mind, won't you please give a warm New York UN welcome to the newly appointed UNICEF Executive Director, Ambassador Catherine Russell.
Well, thank you, Sherman. That was a very warm welcome, and I appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. And as Sherman said, happy International Women's Day. It's been kind of a long day, actually. I started on TV this morning, which is kind of funny, but it was a very warm welcome at the NBC News thing today with lots of young women around, so it was exciting. But I'm very glad that all of you could join us today for this really wonderful premiere, and I want to thank our partners at Spotlight Initiative, especially Nahla, Valji, and Global Coordinator for Senior Advisor at UN Women. So thank you all very much for being here. We're also very fortunate to have one of the series' young stars with us here tonight, and I look forward to hearing about her experience making this movie. I also want to thank UNICEF DRC, National Ambassador Didi Stone for joining our panel this evening and for everything you do for UNICEF. We really are so lucky to have you. This is, as Sherwin said, my first UNICEF premiere, and the subject is very near to my heart. And I think everyone knows when you mention child marriage, I'm very willing to show up. And I'm very interested in empowering girls. So ending child marriage is an absolute priority for me, as it is for UNICEF. But I also know that the situation in Ukraine is weighing heavily on everyone's minds and hearts. And so before I start our program, I wanted to give you just a brief update on what's happening in Ukraine. Excuse me. What's happening to children right now there is a moral outrage. I'm sure you all have seen the harrowing images coming out of both Ukraine and the surrounding countries. The photograph published in the New York Times yesterday of a mother and her 2 children and a friend lying dead on the street, hit by a mortar as they tried to flee to safety, should really shock the conscience of the world. I addressed the UN Security Council yesterday and called for an end to this brutality. The speed and intensity of the escalation has created a massive, massive crisis for children. The UN's most recent data confirmed that at least 27 children have been killed and 42 wounded since February 24th. And of course, I'm sorry to say that we expect this number to go up. We also expect the refugee crisis to grow. At this point, at least 2 million people, half of those children, so 1 million children, have fled Ukraine to neighboring countries, with more fleeing every single day. Just a few days ago, I was on the border of Romania and Ukraine, where thousands of women and children have come to escape fighting. I met with mothers and children who had to flee their homes at a moment's notice. They told me how it felt to leave everything behind, to leave husbands, fathers, elderly loved ones, not knowing when or if they would see each other again. They're traveling with next to nothing. The children had their little backpacks on their backs, and the mothers were usually pulling a single suitcase, a roller bag behind them. The children talked about suddenly being pulled out of school, missing their dads, and the terrifying sound of shellings and gunfire. So many children have been deeply traumatized, and their stories won't leave me or anybody else who's heard them anytime soon. UNICEF and our partners are doing everything we can to reach children and their families. It's a very tough operating environment. We don't always have humanitarian access, and rapidly changing front lines make it much more difficult to deliver critical supplies and services. But we're making a difference wherever and whenever we can. I'm very glad to say that on Sunday, UNICEF was able to deliver about 40 tons of medical life-saving items for children and mothers to 22 hospitals in 5 of the most affected regions. We're grateful for the support we've been receiving from all over the world, and we will need every dollar to make a difference. But ultimately, the only sustainable solution for these children and for Ukraine is peace. I really hope a political solution can be reached. Until then, UNICEF is there, and we will continue to stay and deliver. And I have to say that our team there is incredibly brave. I spoke to them on Skype and kept saying to them, your safety is our top concern. But they don't want to leave. They won't leave. They're staying there to deliver for these children, and it was incredibly heartening for me to see that. As you may have heard, almost all the refugees fleeing Ukraine are women and children. And it's exactly in dangerous times like these that girls and women are their most vulnerable. Girls especially are at risk of gender-based violence and abuse, of exploitation, of being taken out of school, often never to return. And while we're not seeing this in Ukraine, we know that girls caught in emergencies are also most vulnerable to being married off. Which brings me to the program this evening. Around the world today, 650 million women and girls between the ages of 15 and 49 were married as children. Every year, 12 million more girls married before reaching the age of 18. In West and Central Africa, where the movie is set, 2 in 5 girls are married before their 18th birthday, and 1 in 8, as was mentioned, is married before turning 15. In fact, a girl from West and Central Africa still faces the highest risk of child marriage in the entire world. Child marriage limits girls' choices, it limits their lives and futures. It strips girls of the right to learn and to fully contribute to their societies and economies. Instead of advancing prosperity, it fuels the cycle of poverty. It blocks our progress toward a better, fairer world. And let's be completely clear, it's a violation of girls' fundamental human rights. We had been making some progress in ending child marriage by 2030 as part of the Sustainable Development Goals. More countries and communities were standing up for girls, and girls were able to stand up for themselves. But COVID has really put this progress in jeopardy. School closures have affected all children, but globally we estimate that more than 11 million girls may never go back to school. UNICEF and the World Bank estimate that at least 2/3 of all households with children have lost income since the pandemic hit. These 2 factors combine to make girls far more vulnerable to being married off, in some cases sold off for dowry. In fact, we're estimating that the pandemic has put as many as 10 million additional girls at risk of child marriage over the next decade. I was in Afghanistan about 10 days ago on one of my first missions as UNICEF Executive Director. The situation facing all children there is cause for grave, grave concern. We estimate that 1 million children may soon need treatment for severe acute malnutrition, the deadliest form of malnutrition. And I have to say that I've seen a lot of things in my career, but that was really one of the worst things I've ever seen. Diseases like measles and acute diarrhea are spreading, and up to 97% of all families in Afghanistan could be living below the poverty line in a matter of months. Not surprisingly, child marriage is on the rise in Afghanistan. We have had credible reports of a 10-day-old baby girl being offered up for marriage in exchange for dowry. The desperation is just incredible. Crisis is by no means the only cause of child marriage. Cultural norms can cause just as much harm, treating girls as incapable of making their own decisions, and much worse, treating them as property to be traded. But we are not powerless. Girls are not powerless. Their rights are worth defending. Their lives are worth fighting for. In every country, every community, by all of us. We can start today, International Women's Day, by listening to girls so we can understand their experiences and support them as they rewrite their own futures. I think that's what this series we're about to see is all about. So thank you for caring and for joining us tonight for this very special event.
And coming from Africa, I mean, it's nice to be a young Ivorian girl playing Adi. Even though Vaillante is a fictional village, I feel like I was within the entire continent, and I'm definitely grateful for that experience. Since Vaillante has been happening, I definitely received a lot of feedback from people that were not aware of this issue, or that were not aware that there were millions of young girls that were touched by this every single day. And even with UNICEF, I definitely want to engage myself into really showing these girls that they're being seen, that we're seeing them, that we want to really represent what is happening to them globally. And I really hope that I can get to them, to as many people as I can, especially to the villages, to entire families, because you can see there's not only, it's the whole, the entire environment is being affected. You can see a teen has a mom who really sad to give her daughter away, to marriage, but a family situation just obliges her to do that. So I feel like not pointing fingers to anyone, but really realizing that if the entire family environment, the entire context is being touched by this, and it is a hard decision to make, I hope that it really just shows people that it's not a one marriage. There's an entire parallel. And my life, I mean, I definitely want to meet girls. I want to meet girls, I was able to get into the skin of one of them, but to meet them and really hear them in real life, I think it would be great. And just really engage myself into this class.
I will say, just having watched this, and I don't know how many of you have experienced sort of a deeper understanding of what child marriage is. I certainly hadn't until this very moment. I mean, I had a sort of broad understanding of it. But this really, what jumps out at me is the patriarchy in that radio conversation, the patriarchy in the home, where the mother's voice is sort of diminished by, even though she's sort of trying to push back. It's the man's decision still, right, in that context.
Yes, I think also from this, you realize how much the patriarchy is behind a lot of things. Coming from Africa, from the Ivory Coast, it was easier for me to understand, because in our culture, you have to respect your elders. Men definitely have it easier than us. And you can also see it in the show how when the man speaks, the woman has to, make herself small and listen, because he's the head of the household. And whether it was Fatima with her husband, Ivy with her brother, even Sally with Daniel Okoro in a way, it's ingrained subconsciously. Girls are aware of that, and it's kind of sad, because like Sally said, for example, parents being scared of the girls getting married because they might lose their virginity early, or they might not listen. There's this sense of entitlement to the female body and the female mind, which I find sad sometimes. Actually, a lot of times, not sometimes. Yeah, it is saddening to see.
Nankali, Maksud, let's bring you in. Today is, of course, International Women's Day. Before the screening, Executive Director Russell said that UNICEF predicts an additional 10 million girls are at risk of child marriage because of COVID and the crisis, right? We all know how COVID-19 has exacerbated violence against women. We understand that poverty has increased. This pandemic has really set us back. So when we talk about building back better, these are kinds of real-life experiences that we're trying to build back better from. So tell us, tell us more about what you're seeing and how UNICEF is working to address this.
Thank you so much, Sherwin. So, just first of all to say that during the period of COVID, a lot of girls, because of schools being closed, were held back at home. And most people feel that, if girls are at home, if girls are with their families, they're in a safe space. The story for many girls throughout the world is actually that they were not in a safe space. Many of them, were in houses where they were facing all forms of violence. In addition to them not being, to facing violence, they were not at school, so they were not linked up to their peers. They didn't have other young people to be able to engage with. Services got disrupted, so the community workers, the social workers who would normally be able to reach out to them to find out if anything is going wrong in their lives were not there for them to be able to speak up to and to be able to support them if anything was going wrong in their lives. We know today that almost 11 million girls won't go back to school. We know the longer that girls are out of school, the less chance there is of them actually going back into school. In some countries like Uganda, it took like 2 years, just last month, that many girls were actually going back to school for the first time. And for many of those, already we have huge cases of teenage pregnancy, so that also raises issues for them in terms of the capacity for them to be able to go back to school. Then that they've now become mothers, what does that mean for them as they go forward in their lives? So girls have faced a lot of challenges during this period of time. The good news is that, I think as the world began to understand the situation more, a lot of services came back up and running. We were reaching out to girls within the household. Some of the countries opened up. Girls have been able to go back to school, but many of them won't be able to go back to school. And what does that mean for their lives? How do we continue to be able to reach out to support them so they can be able to make something of their lives?
It means they won't be able to study surgery, I can tell you that. Right?
That's for sure. Yeah. And so one of the things that we've been doing as UNICEF is looking at, for example, the school system. What kind, do we have countries that have policies in place to allow girls to be able to still go back to school after huge gaps? To allow girls to go back to school regardless of them having gotten pregnant. To allow girls to be able to go back and catch up with other girls who didn't get, interrupted school. So we're looking at, what are the options for these girls, irregardless, of their situation, to still be able to make, something of their lives. But for many, Sherwin, they will end up, or they are unfortunately or fortunately pregnant. They're married off, and I really want to make sure that we remember those, because I think a lot of the time we focus our attention on girls who are at risk of marrying. There's many girls who have ended up married. They're living in poor households. They're living in rural areas. For many of those, we won't be able to reach out, and so unless we do extra effort, we really won't be able to reach out to those, and those are particularly vulnerable for us as we plan what we need to do for them.
I'm hoping this conversation is allowing some questions to percolate, because I'm coming to the audience in just a moment. Nahla, Valji, let's bring you in. In West and Central Africa, about 2 in 5 girls are married before their 18th birthday, and 1 in 8 is married before her 15th birthday. In this region, a girl faces the highest risk in the world of child marriage. How has the Spotlight Initiative contributed towards the elimination of child marriage in Africa?
Thanks so much for that, Sherman. Let me just start by congratulating UNICEF on supporting this project and thanking Mouna for bringing your talents to the screen in that way and really portraying the complexity and emotion behind this issue. I think that was just incredibly moving and getting the message across. Sherman, you gave us the elevator pitch for Spotlight Initiative earlier, and appreciate that. As you said,
that's why they pay me the big bucks.
As you noted, it's a 500 million euro investment by the European Union. We are entering our 4th year of programming now, invested in 25 countries. In West Africa and in Africa in total is our largest investment, close to $300 million in 8 countries. 4 of them in West Africa, and many of those initiatives focused on this issue of harmful practices, child marriage, FGM, and ending violence against women and girls broadly. And if I can just share with you a few statistics, in 2020, we were able to achieve in Niger, working with government and community members to set up village protection committees tasked with preventing child marriage. In Malawi, through the Safe Schools intervention, we equipped 200,000 young people to be able to identify gender-based violence to prevent child marriage. So amongst peers identifying this issue. Similarly, in Uganda, setting up 300 mentorship clubs for young women. In Mozambique, educating 300 local leaders on a law against child marriage that had recently been passed. And that actually led to some of these cases being identified and the marriages themselves being canceled. As was mentioned, it's not too late, and addressing this issue at any point is critically important in order to address and prevent. But maybe if I can just say, Sherman, shifting away from the initiative for a moment, and just say, as we're commemorating International Women's Day today, initiatives like this and engaging the creatives is so important. Because really, this is an issue that we can address in a short period of time, and we can make a real impact within a generation. And I say that because I am myself 2 generations away. Both of my grandmothers were child brides in East Africa. One married at the age of 13, had my father at the age of 15, the other married at the age of 14, had her first child at the age of 16. And really what it was awareness, education, and opportunity. And I think the last thing I want to just say is that, if I think about my 2 grandmothers, they were brilliant and fierce and determined. And as we commemorate International Women's Day, it occurs to me how many generations of capacity of half of humanity we have lost. And I can only imagine that if we remove these obstacles and we allow that expertise, that capacity, that determination and brilliance to come to the table, that we would have a very different world today.
What was your reaction? I mean, given your personal experience, you talk about your grandparents watching this today. I mean, how does that hit you?
I really appreciated seeing the complexity of the issue. I think that we talk about this as an issue of violence and harmful practice, and of course it is. But I think, Mouna, as you said, this is a complex issue. There is the patriarchy at every level. But there's also the complexity of hearing a father say, she'll be better taken care of there. That, the issues of poverty, of feeling like you're protecting a child, that they will be taken care of, or that you can't afford to take care of the entire family. Edie Russell referred to Afghanistan earlier. We are seeing this play out there, just the sheer desperation. And so I think what's important is for us to see the complexity of this issue, because it's only then that we can really address the root causes.
Didi Stone, let's bring you in. Congratulations again on joining the UNICEF family earlier today when you were named National Ambassador for UNICEF Democratic Republic of Congo. I know you're going to respond in French, but we have some translation alongside you. What role can national ambassadors like yourself and public personalities, what role can they play in bridging cultures like yourself, play in addressing issues like child marriage in Africa?
Okay, so first of all, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
as he said, I would like to speak in French. It's better for me to have the right word. Donc j'aimerais d'abord remercier d'abord l'UNICEF de m'avoir attribué un rôle aussi honorifique qu'ambassadrice nationale en RDC. Pour l'UNICEF, c'est un rôle et un titre qui me tient particulièrement à cœur, sachant que je viens d'un pays qui est touché par les conditions, le mariage forcé par exemple, tel qu'on vient de voir, les femmes violées, la précarité, le manque d'éducation, etc. Et je pense qu'en fait, la série a très bien illustré le rôle qu'une ambassadrice comme moi pourrait avoir, c'est-à-dire de porter en fait sa voix comme je n'ai pas retenu le nom du personnage qui t'a été. Non, pas Sally, ok. Comme le rôle de Sally, c'est-à-dire avoir une communauté qui vous écoute afin de pouvoir relayer, de pouvoir sensibiliser un maximum, de pouvoir aider, ne serait-ce qu'à peut-être son petit niveau ou à cette échelle, de pouvoir sensibiliser un maximum de personnes et de pouvoir tout simplement aider des personnes et faire entendre des jeunes femmes, pour le coup, du coup, des enfants qui aimeraient en fait qu'on entende leur appel à l'aide, tout simplement. Et je pense que je peux servir avec ma communauté et le fait que je sois connue notamment en Afrique, dans mon pays, afin de sensibiliser un maximum de personnes, de relayer par contre ce message et d'appeler les gens en fait à pouvoir contribuer, à pouvoir aider, ne serait-ce qu'à leur petit niveau, comme ils peuvent en tout cas, toutes ces femmes, toutes ces jeunes filles qui ont tout simplement besoin d'aide et qui vivent des situations qui sont désastreuses et juste tristes.
I was going to say, can you please repeat?
Okay, so let me
Over to you, madam.
Let me start. I'm not an official translator. I'm
No, but we'll give you 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Maksud. I'm the Chief of Child Protection for UNICEF DRC, and I was responsible for child marriage in West and Central Africa, so very much at the heart of this project. So I'll try to summarize what Didi says. So first of all, she would like to thank UNICEF for appointing her as National Ambassador for the Democratic Republic of Congo today. It's a great honor for her to be appointed as ambassador. She felt very moved by the movie because especially also in the DRC, there are approximately 1 in 3 girls who married before 18. So this is a subject that is very close to her heart. She feels that as a national ambassador, as very well illustrated in the movie by Sally, that actually she can use her platforms, her community, the fact that she's a public figure, to raise awareness and to be able to help girls and communities. Again, she said that she will be she's very grateful actually to be able to serve girls, to serve children, and to use her personality and also that to carry messages for children.
One thing, j'ai oublié de te féliciter. Je voulais vraiment te féliciter. Je voulais te féliciter pour ta performance qui est juste incroyable, vraiment. Je trouve ça juste dingue que tu aies pris en fait ce rôle qui est un rôle assez important, pesant et touchant, tu vois. Et je pense que en fait tu as fait le travail, il est juste parfait. Et je trouve ça, et je tiens aussi à dire bravo à toute l'équipe aussi, de la production et tout ça, et les autres acteurs, parce qu'en fait je me suis pas rendu compte, je pense que c'est le cas, qu'en un épisode, ça réussit, ça permet de faire transmettre tout un message, toute une situation qui dure depuis des années, et je trouve ça juste formidable, que ce soit pour les plus jeunes, pour les personnes qui peut-être sont totalement ignorantes de la situation actuelle dans plusieurs pays d'Afrique, et c'est juste remarquable. Donc voilà, bravo.
Where she says that it's a very complex subject, but that in one episode, even though she was not really familiar, we could see actually all the complexity, but also she felt that it's a great way to educate people about what child marriage is.
Perfect, thank you. I want to come back to Mouna and just to talk about what your plans are for 2022 in terms of this film. Where are you going? Where will people be able to see it? You know, where are you interacting with young women that you seek to really influence through this medium?
So actually, a really good news that, I mean, it already happened, but Vaillante actually has been diffused on Canal Plus. It's a major media outlet back in and it's going to be released like I think every week during this month. Basically, since it's the month of basically women's protections, but especially child marriage protection. And I hope that it reaches as many people as possible. For the rest of this year, and actually for the next years, the upcoming years, I definitely hope to get in touch with young girls. Actually, my mom is right here. A few weeks ago, actually.
Where's mom? Stand up.
She's right here.
Where's mom, Nahla?
She's shy. A few weeks ago, actually, she learned a heartbreaking case about a young girl in Mali who was 13 years old and who got married. And because of childbirth, she is now paralyzed. So her name is Yaisise, yes. And we got in contact with her, and we're trying to do as much as we can, but I think what I want for the future is just to reach out to as many girls as possible. But continue to work with UNICEF as well, because it was an amazing team. Not only UNICEF, but also the rooftop team, the directors, the Collins brothers, Tom and James. Everyone did an amazing job. And I really hope I can tell more stories as well. through this podcast, I realized that acting is actually amazing. And I hope I can do more work. But definitely just reaching out and having connections with girls all around the world. I really want to get to know them, to talk to them, to show them the show, to really show them, not only them, but also elders as well, visit them in villages as well.
Well, if you want to do your own stuff, Nahla's sitting right next to you. Apparently she's got a lot of money. I just wanted to talk to, but just explore that a little bit more with me, Nahla. Just in terms of the investments in the medium of film, in terms of fixing the world, right? I mean, this is about fixing. It's about correcting injustices of the past, right? So that we know better, we do better. Talk about that investment and using film as a medium.
Absolutely, sure. And firstly, I should say that Spotlight Initiative is not an entity that stands alone. We are implemented by the agencies, UNICEF being one of them, UNFPA, UNDP, UN Women being the others. And so I really hope that we can partner and take this on the road with you and build on what it is that is already being done. We cannot address violence against women. We cannot shift attitudes, gender norms, and stereotypes unless we work with those who are shaping culture. And through Spotlight Initiative, we have been engaging with influencers, with change makers. We have our brilliant head of communications, Koye, sitting here, who leads on these efforts. Really working with the creative arts and the entertainment industry. And I think one of the things that we've done is we've recognized that as the UN, we have to go beyond speaking to the converted. We have to go beyond speaking in our own bubble. We have to engage people and allow them to take this to their constituencies and to their audiences. And so we have Spotlight Initiative has created the Culture Change Commitment, which is a guide that has been developed by influencers and for influencers. For them to take forward on social media in their content and to engage others. And we've had some amazing dialogues on social media by young hip hop artists, by young Bollywood actresses talking about the film industry, etc. So really engaging with influencers in the creative industry, but having them take these messages forward and shaping culture themselves, and that's critically important.
Yeah, and I mean, having an event in a room like this with people from different sectors and walks of life, I think is exactly what you're aiming at. Folks, I'm going to open the floor now. If I can see a show of hands, if there's a hand at the back, we've got roving mics, I see it. So the two hands at the back there, so if you can move the microphones to the back. It's a lady in a turquoise, I think it's green or turquoise. I mean, if it's wrong, I'm colorblind. But if it's right, I'm dead right. And please direct your question at any of the panelists you want to direct that.
Sure, thank you. It's green, sustainable. I just want to point out that we're celebrating International Women's Day today, and the colour of Australia is green for sustainability. As we were thinking about everything that's going on in the world, we really need sustainability. So, my name's Anna. I've been really moved by this movie. I've been really touched and really thought a lot about this topic, and I think you convey it in a really powerful way that is both striking and heartbreaking in a way that is really impactful. So my sincere congratulations to the entire team that has put this together. My question is, what is the call to action? I know you're speaking to the converted, but what can we do here in the audience, everyone that's here? I think I speak for everyone when we say that we've been moved and we want to take this forward. So what can we do?
We've nominated someone for you. Nankali, go ahead.
So thank you. I mean, that's exactly the kind of question that we're looking for. I mean, first of all, I think everybody received copies of the flyer. And so you only watched the first episode. There's 2 more episodes, so we'd love for you to be able to share that with your friends, your family, people who work in this area, people who don't work in this area, who also need to be influenced as well. So we want to take the opportunity to spread the word as much as possible. A lot of people hear about child marriage, know about girls being made vulnerable, but don't have it to this level of detail. And so we would love, number 1, for us to be able to raise awareness. Number 2, what do we do about this? Because you're raising awareness, and then people say, then what? What do I do about this? 1, education. I think everybody's spoken about that today, but I just want to say one thing. Not just education, tick the box, but education as far as secondary, And even more importantly, as far as building skills, if girls actually see opportunities for their lives, if their families see opportunities, then they can be able to put child marriage, marriage, by the way, is not a bad thing. We want to be clear, it's about doing it at the right time. And so how do we create the space for girls to be able to build capacity, to have opportunities in their lives, so that they put that into the back burner until the right time, and families can also delay that until a much later point. Second and final point, just because I want to give other people opportunity to speak, is addressing poverty. During this time of COVID, the world has been hit by a recession. It's even worse, at household level. So how do we build, how do we address poverty at household level? We see, and other people might be aware of, cash transfer programs. How do we lift the capacity of these households so they don't have to make these choices? I've had people talking about patriarchy, indeed, but a lot of families actually are having to make choices, and it's about survival choices. What are we going to do to ensure that we're able to feed families within these households, and they make a choice. It might not necessarily be the right choice, but if they don't have choices, this is what they tend to do. And so, again, as we're out there looking at how we can be able to support and not have girls reach, into these levels, one of the key things that we can address is household poverty. Let's ensure that families are not put into situations where they have to make these choices.
And since marriage is such a good thing, the next person cannot be a divorcee. Who's the hand at the back there? And then I'm going to come to Ibtisam on the left over here. And then I think you'll just show me your hands again, okay? Go ahead, please, at the back. Yep, right at the back.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Hannah. I'm a student in the city. I'm really
perfect, Hannah. Thank you.
Other people should. I think my question is a little bit similar to whoever wants to answer, maybe Nahla. But I think I'm curious about the impacts of neo-colonial relationships on issues such as child marriage. I'm thinking particularly in the episode when Sully's talking about the cyclical nature of poverty, lower education rates resulting in a weaker economy, resulting in families not being able to support their children, their daughters, resulting in child marriage. It seems very cyclical, and I'm wondering what, as New Yorkers, do we play into that in the commercial, capital of the country, the world, or what's the neo-colonial relationship there, if there is one, and if there's anything that our direct actions can kind of do about it, kind of like the previous question.
I mean, she called your name, so I guess patriarchy is part of that, so good luck.
So I get the easy question. It's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would pick up on two things. I think the first is to say the issue of child and early marriage is not something that just exists over there. I would ask the colleagues to correct me on this, but I believe that up until a few years ago, almost every 50 of the states in this country allowed for child marriage. And in fact, I think it's only in the last few years that a couple of them have shifted away from that. So I think we need to understand that this is a deeply complex issue. It takes different forms in different contexts. I fully agree with Nankali. I think we have to look at the issues of poverty, particularly in this moment with the pandemic, where we're seeing that impacting. But I would bring it back to patriarchy as well, because I think in contexts like this country, and I raise that because I think that when we act locally and we see that these issues are in our own communities, it helps us to think about it more broadly than just being something that happens over there. So I think that, bringing it back to the issue of patriarchy, the fact that, you put it so lovely that there's this assumption of ownership over women's bodies, girls' bodies, minds, and I really think that's a root cause. So whether it's happening here, it's happening there. I don't know if that answers the question, but I will say that I think we start to disrupt those power hierarchies when we think about the fact that that discrimination, inequality exists everywhere, and that we need to address it everywhere.
And probably a good point at which to highlight the Sustainable Development Goals. I made a reference to this in my opening remarks. There are 17 goals with various targets. It's essentially the development blueprint for the world. A lot of people, perhaps in the developed world, like countries like the United States, don't really have conversations about, how can we end poverty? How do we end hunger? Or how do we get quality healthcare to people? Or climate action, or blue economies, and the list goes on. And there is an existing blueprint adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in 2015. It's all on paper, it's there for everybody to see, and if you want to know what you can do more, read those 17 goals, understand the targets in each goal, and that might give you some direction as to what you might be able and capable of doing in terms of the broader developmental agenda that we seek to address through these conversations. Now, I know there was a hand over there. Ibtisam, please. I think it's Ibtisam. Is it Ibtisam?
Yes. Hi, thank you, Sharon.
She's wearing black.
Can see that. My name is Ibtisam Azim. I'm a journalist covering the UN too. Unfortunately, we cover the Security Council too much, the Security Council. But thank you for this opportunity and for the event. My question is actually about conflict zones, and I'm thinking here about places like Syria and Yemen, where probably in Syria before the Arab Spring you didn't see a widespread child marriage, but now you see that. So the question is, how do you deal with this issue in such places where people don't even, where we face in Yemen now also starvation, etc. Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing that up. My colleague Tasha is actually sitting up there, and we're always talking about the nexus and the links between the development world and the emergency world. So I'm really glad you raised that question. A lot of the work that we've been doing in child marriage has had a huge bias towards the development world, but increasingly we're doing more and more within the humanitarian context. The first thing we started to do, and as you quite rightly point out, is to understand what does child marriage look like within humanitarian settings. We're very clear today that definitely humanitarian settings accelerate and create the environment where child marriage can be on the increase. And we're starting to learn, what is it that we can be able to do with that environment, within that situation. That comes within the context of a lot of our GBV programs. So one of the things we're doing, of course, is even in that environment is how do we raise awareness, regardless of the humanitarian setting? How do we create spaces for young girls to be able to engage with each other, for us to be able to talk to them, to look at issues to do with sexual and reproductive health rights, as an example. We know that early pregnancy is one of the key drivers, for child marriage, and so how do we reach out to girls in humanitarian settings to ensure that they can be able to access those services so they can be able to prevent child marriage. So getting the right information to them, getting the services out to them is, really up front and center. But how do we do that also at scale? A lot of the time within the humanitarian settings, we have either people moving around or we're only able to reach a certain number of girls. So a challenge for us within that setting is that we're now very clear that yes, it happens within that setting and that setting enhances it, but what are the things that we can be able to do at the scale to be able to address it effectively is what is still out there for us. But yes, definitely happens, and yes, a major area, and good that you're raising Syria and Yemen, that's clearly at the forefront of where we're doing a lot of our child marriage programming right now.
Hand at the back there.
Hello, thank you. My name is Afshan. I work for a nonprofit called Axiom Reach. Tried to find UNICEF food, but only had maybe in my closet. Anyways, thank you for your film. It was really moving. I guess I wanted to ask about the format of the film. Typically, I'm used to seeing issues like these as documentaries and nonprofit works, or as non-fiction works, excuse me. What was the thinking behind making it a fiction piece? It was refreshing and heartbreaking at the same time. And also from Mouna, I was wondering if you could speak to, it sounds like you've also spoken with people like this going forward, but in pre-production, have you ever encountered any real-life Adis or real-life Salis, and how did that inform their performance?
So actually before, I think when I was since I was 8, I would often have like a Sunday evening movie with my mom, and we would often watch movies on
issues that happen to women. So it would be the child marriage, also FGM. I remember watching a lot of movies on that, but also in school. I'm currently studying political science, and even in my political science studies, we also tackle these subjects. So it was not like a new issue to me at all when I was tackling it. But I remember when I was studying for ADI, I definitely had to, watch a lot of documentaries. The information is there. It's definitely on Google, it's definitely on YouTube. You can find it. So I really had to, really make that effort and watch all these girls around the world talk about their experience, but also the parents. And I think choosing fiction, actually, I think was a great idea. Because a lot of the documentaries are definitely online, but creating this fictional village as well, because we don't know where it is. It's not, we don't know if it's in the west, in the east, north, we don't know. I think creating this fictional world basically just makes us just focus on the story, because I feel like if, for example, it was somewhere in Niger, I feel like people would not be as concentrated, but the fact that it's fictional just makes the entire audience focus on the story and on the characters as well. And like everyone said, I think media is a beautiful outlet to just spread information. The same with writing is an art. I think media is one. And because it's so easy, to just get it to everyone. So I feel like doing this fiction was a lovely idea.
Final question from the audience, anybody? Any takers? In the front here, please. Wearing... Orange.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Dusni, and I work with the Division of Global Communication and Advocacy at UNICEF. Thank you for this. This was very moving, very close to my heart, because I'm from Nigeria, and I also worked on the Spotlight Initiative while I was with the Nigeria Country Office. So my question is, how are we facilitating youth participation and engagement on this issue?
Take your friends to the movies.
I think as a young person, obviously, I think also with influencers like Didi, who have like a wide range of a big community, I think sharing that information with people around us, reaching out to other people, creating petitions as well. I think when we all get together and talk to the higher powers, like Nahla said, we are really able to make a big change. But I think, like I was also telling Nahla, education is basically freedom. So I think educating ourselves any ways we can, and just spreading that information to everyone. Because I feel like you're never too young. You're never too young. There are other change makers, not necessarily in child marriage, but also in sustainability, that are making changes because they're just using ways around them, reaching out to their communities as well, making petitions, making sustainable new choices. So I feel like whatever, I think together we can just, because two brains are better than one. Getting together and thinking about new ideas to change, reaching to the higher powers, the higher institutions that have the capability to change this is crucial. So that's why I would say, I think collaborating, and also young, old, it doesn't matter. I feel like everyone, whether you're a woman, you're a man, non-binary, we can all just get together and really collaborate on this, because people can have an idea that you might not have, and it can go very far. So that's nice. Thank you for your question. You have a beautiful tangerine sweater.
So maybe some politics in your future, that political science degree is kind of handy, I'll tell you that.
It's been incredible to be able to share International Women's Day with such inspiring, incredible individuals. I would just end by saying follow social
Spotlight.
What was the name?
It's UNICEF and Spotlight.
$20. Follow Spotlight Initiative on social media. Have a look at, each of us are influencers. Each of us are change agents. What I loved about this movie was that the protagonist, all of the protagonists were young women, but the change agent was a young woman looking at what she could do within her own sphere of influence to make a difference. And we can all do that. So awareness, education, opportunity, and we really can make a difference on this issue. Thank you.
Mouna?
So I would definitely like to thank the UNICEF team and the rooftop teams. They were absolutely amazing. Every single person that I met in these two teams were just out of this world. I've never seen such great people. So thank you for allowing me to tell this story and for just letting me, express myself, meet you guys and work with you guys. And I just hope that everyone just uses more compassion when getting out of here, try to really move with love, share love around you, and maybe just share this with the people around you, to spread more awareness on child marriage, and never be afraid to reach out to educate yourself, even if you don't know now, it's okay. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I really hope you did.
Je pense que tout a été déjà dit. J'aimerais encore une fois remercier l'UNICEF de m'avoir convié ici. Vous le savez déjà, mais je voudrais dire encore un plaisir et un honneur. Et j'invite du coup tout le monde à aller regarder les deux derniers épisodes de la série Vaillante et de pouvoir la relayer, de pouvoir sensibiliser vos proches, vos amis. Et voilà, je pense que tout a déjà été dit en fait, donc voilà. Oui.
Okay, so Didi said that everything has been said already, so again she's thanking to UNICEF for actually bringing her idea, and she would like to encourage everyone to watch the two other episodes of Vaillante, and then for people to actually reflect about it, to talk about it, to sensitize others about it. Thanking everyone.
My thanks indeed to the panelists, and if you learned anything tonight, ladies and gentlemen, it's 2022 and this is what gender balance looks like. 2 more episodes online. Go home and watch it, share it if you can. Please join us in the lobby for a drink.